when I was in high school going into college, that's around the time when we had some cousins of ours that were murdered in Nigeria. I had something that told me like, you should really embrace more of your Nigerian side. I've only been to, the last time I've been back to Nigeria, I was a young kid. It was important for me at that time to just, look, I'm gonna just go by B Amechi. A lot of people know me still as Brendan, but I wanna go by Amechi, so I'm gonna just call it B Amechi. I never looked back from that point. Amechi means only God knows tomorrow. You have to add your uniqueness into the world because we all have something to offer. That's just something I live by to this day. You're a uniquely talented individual. There's never been somebody like you in the history of the world, and there never will be somebody like you ever again. Embrace that, make your mark, and add color.
Welcome to Bridge to Self, where we empower second and 1.5 generation Black Americans. I'm your host, Ben Arthur. So I'm super excited to be joined this week by Amechi, who is a Nigerian-American storyteller and entrepreneur. He's best known as the business manager of 19 Keys, who's one of the world's top futurists and thought leaders. Amechi is the chief marketing officer of High Lvl Media, through which he's an award-winning producer of High Lvl Conversations, one of the top podcasts on earth. Amechi is a man of many talents, wears a lot of hats in the business space and the digital media storytelling space. He's kind enough to join me on the show to not only discuss his story, but his work with 19 Keys as well. So without any further ado, let's go. I was looking on your LinkedIn page and there was a note there. You talked about how you didn't start going by just Amechi until college to kind of remind yourself of your Nigerian chief roots. And for those of you listening who are unfamiliar with Amechi and his story, his father is recognized as a chief in the Igbo tribe in Nigeria. And so I was curious, though, Amechi, why was it at that point in your life, being in college, to where you felt like you maybe needed that reminder of kind of where you come from, what your bloodline is?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I have one of those stories of the, really African American, right? Nigerian American, people who are in my shoes. It's a very unique position because, my mother, she's from here. She's from Oakland, California. Her family's from New Orleans, Arkansas. So, she's Black American. And my father, being from Nigeria, I should say, first generation, he definitely has like one of those true American stories. Sold his motorcycle for a plane ticket to America, became an ice cream man, was doing that while going to school, ended up being an investment banker, like true American story, American dream story, I should say. And, at the time when I was in high school going into college, I just was in a period of, that's around the time when we had some cousins of ours that were murdered in Nigeria. Really just for, Nigeria is one of those places, like a lot of places around the world, where, there may be a period of war that will stop for a period of time, but it kind of always comes back, whether it's like, months or years or, even decades, it's always like there, that tribal, those tribal issues. Right. And so, it was right around the time where two of my cousins had got murdered. And, I had something that told me like, you should really embrace more of your Nigerian side. I've only been to, the last time I've been back to Nigeria, I was a young kid. I haven't been back actually as an adult, and I really want to go back, but it's always, issues that come up and things of that nature. So it was important for me at that time to just, look, I'm gonna just go by B Amechi. A lot of people know me still as Brendan, but I want to go by Amechi. So I'm gonna just call it B Amechi. And I never looked back from that point. And Amechi means only God knows tomorrow, right? It means only God knows tomorrow. And I think that chi element of the name is something that is recognized universally, chi, spirit, energy, right? All those sort of things. It all comes to that same source of, God. And I really try to live my life by that. Only God knows tomorrow. Whether you're on a high, you could always know that tomorrow things could come down. If you're on a low, you can always know that things can come up, but you got to stay grounded. You got to stay in balance because ultimately only God knows.
So how do you stay in balance?
That's a good question. I mean, I think family is something that keeps me balanced. Um, the people that you grew up with, if you keep solid people around you, they're always going to keep you in balance. Um, it's funny. There's a big show on Apple TV called Severance. I don't know if you've heard of it. Are you
I
familiar with that?
have. I
Like,
have. I haven't watched it though.
yeah, so it's an interesting concept because it's like you're splitting away your work life from your personal life without getting into the details of the show. But you basically, these people, they take this, they get this surgery where it basically splits their minds between their work life and their personal life. So you don't have to ever worry about your work life and your personal life. And in your work life, you only know your work life. You don't even know what's happening in your personal life. And the question becomes, is that something you would do? And for me, it's like a resounding hell no, because like everything is the same. Like to me, the concept of having a work versus a life is like, it doesn't work for me because like everything is intermixed. Like life is all one, right? It's all intermixed. But to your question about balance, it's about having those foundations of people around you. My fiance keeps me grounded. My cousins keep me grounded. I've known Keys for about 10 years. So it's not like just a professional relationship that we have. That's like my brother, you know what I'm saying? So working with people on a day-to-day basis who you actually know and respect and resonate with, that's all going to keep you grounded and keep you balanced. And then you got, just the extracurriculars, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's, having books to read. You definitely got to stay tuned to your passions. I'm a big sports fan, a big football fan, whatever it may be, just catching something that's not, just work focused. So I do my best to stay balanced as I can.
Okay. And kind of going off of the whole concept of balance, Amechi, I saw on your Instagram a post. It was from several months ago, probably the middle of the year last year. And you talked about having 100% balance, but putting 110% effort within having 100% balance. So I guess what does that look like for you exactly, or what exactly did you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good concept to have of always putting in 110% into things. I used to do a lot of interviews with an organization called Trap Art, and I had these principles that I came up with how to do the best interview that you possibly can, right? I had all these principles of like, these are the things that if you live by these elements, you will have the best interview, right? One of them being research, right? Knowing who your guest is, making sure that you research through it. And another one was making sure that you can be an element of wit and humor, right? Be able to bounce things back with them and, just have that element. It's like a Jon Stewart, right? Jon Stewart's great at that. He's always really on the point.
Yeah.
I feel like he does some of the best interviews. And in the research, like you could think of somebody like Nardwar when it comes to that. Oprah was always good at getting the emotional elements out of an interview, making people feel comfortable that they can have that emotions. But I had all these different rules, right? But the number one rule was be 110% invested in who that guest is. Because if you're 110% invested in who that person is, it's going to be a great interview. All those other things will transpire, right? So I'll try to keep that mentality with everything that I do. Just if you're going to do it, put 110% effort into it and everything else will work itself out. Like I used to work in public accounting at Ernst Young, and we used to do these interviews for people that were applying for jobs. And we would, I would sit on these interviews. And one of the things that I always noticed was you can tell when somebody was nervous and not prepared versus somebody who was nervous and prepared, right? There's a big difference. And it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not be perfect because nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
But if you're 100%, if you're 110% invested in something, if you have that passion, then that's always going to shine through. That's always going to shine through.
Amechi, to go back a little bit, discussing kind of that shift to just wanting to be referred to as Amechi and kind of the unfortunate situations that happen with some of your family back in Nigeria. Before that point, before all that happened, maybe high school, middle school, how were you looking at your identity? I guess you mentioned that your mom is Black American, your father obviously being from Nigeria. How did you maybe look at your kind of unique sense of identity, right? Because that's a unique blend. So I guess how did you see yourself as just more African American? Did you see yourself as just not Nigerian. Kind of when I think I'm a little bit younger than you, but when I was coming up, it was kind of weird to be African a little bit. That didn't start to change until many years later, I think, when I started to get into college. But I'm just curious for you, in your experience growing up, how did you look at yourself?
Yeah, there's a lot of elements to that. I think it wasn't just the African, Black American. It was also being from Oakland, California, which is it's a very diverse place. The Bay Area is actually like very diverse. You see
Yeah.
all different types of culture. They all kind of intermix to a certain extent. So being from Oakland, California, I went to high school and middle school in a place called Danville, California, which is like one of the most, wealthiest gated community, areas. It was like an hour plus away from where I lived. I had to take like, it was an hour and 30 minutes for me to commute to school every day. And when you add on basketball practices and things like that, it was tricky. And so, it's all white school, very small school. And so there's a lot of different things when it came to play of like identity in terms of like how I fit into everything. I always felt that there was like this energy of like the Nigerians specifically, but Africans in general, who were like 100% African, who both of their parents were from Nigeria or both of their parents were from Africa, versus the ones that were like half, you know what I'm saying? So like we would do it'd be a lot of functions and things like that. And I always got that energy. And I was, for me, again, I went to Nigeria when I was really young, and, my dad didn't teach me how to speak, Igbo. There's a lot of things that I was disconnected with from my Nigerian side. My grandmother on my dad's side went to live with us for a period of time when I was growing up, and that was a real opportunity for me to get a little bit closer with her. But even still, there's language barriers. There's, it was just I wasn't fully ingratiated into my Nigerian side. So, I think I always felt that energy from people that were 100% Nigerian. I always felt like, something there. But I always just embraced being who I was. I never really I was always confident because I think, one of the elements that my dad instilled in me that I think is very traditional Nigerians is just whatever you do, be the best at it, be a leader, be disciplined. He would threaten to take me to Nigeria like every year for boarding school, like damn near every year. If I if I had like one grade that I had a B+ in, or like one slip up on anything, like every year he would threaten to send me to boarding school in Nigeria, like literally every year. You know what I'm saying? So it was just one of those things where I always looked at it as like, be the best, no matter what you do, be a leader, be disciplined, and be comfortable being in your own skin. And I think that even from a young age, that always kind of stuck out with me. Like I never really had this pressure of being something else or feeling less than because of X, Y, and Z with my demographic or identity. That never was an issue for me. And so, fast forward to when I started my video production company, which is called Add Color. My whole motto with that was you have to add your uniqueness into the world because we all have something to offer, right? And that's just something I live by to this day. You're a uniquely talented individual. There's never been somebody like you in the history of the world, and there never will be somebody like you ever again. So, embrace that, make your mark, and add color. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm all about. So even at an early age, I always had that mentality of I knew I was a little bit different in the environments that I was in, but it was like a badge of like honor. Like I love that. I embraced that. Like it was dope to me,
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of add off of that, Amechi, just the fact that you were kind of part of so many different environments, right? Like African-American, Nigerian-American, growing up in a diverse area like the Bay Area, going to an all-white, maybe kind of bougie private type of school. How do you think maybe being in so many different environments has been somewhat of a superpower, so to speak, as you've gotten into business and doing digital media storytelling? Because for me, like, it was kind of like the same way for me. Like I grew up in the suburbs of Seattle, Washington, a lot of Asian, a lot of white, kind of bougie, kind of the way you described what your schooling was like. It was kind of like what mine was like too. But then I have the Ghanaian background as well. And I feel like that has served me. I never fit in a box, but I feel like because of who I am, like what you were saying about being your authentic self, like you almost feel like a confidence because of that. And it took me a while to figure that out for me personally, but just for you, do you think you've always kind of looked at that as a power just because
Yeah.
you've dabbled in so many different environments and taken that into your work, would you say?
Yeah, 100%, man. Superpower, whatever you want to call it, you just got to embrace your environment, your upbringing to your advantage. And so for me, I've always had the ability to, people talk a lot about code switching, right?
Yeah.
Being a different person in different environments, being a little bit of a chameleon. I never really looked at it like code switching. I actually more so always wanted to like stand out, kind of going back to like going by Amechi instead of Brendan. In any environment that I wanted to be like, this is who I am. Like, let me be very firm in like who I am, where I come from, how I operate, and be comfortable in that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna of course need to adjust to the environments that you're in slightly depending on where you're at. But I feel like for the most part, I'm the same person, whether I was at Santa Clara University, whether I was at, Ernst Young, whether I was, doing music videos with rap artists, whether I was working with like I've always felt like I'm the same person. So I think in terms of your question, the superpower is just networking, man. Being able to look like when I live like an hour plus away from where I went to high school. So if we have like basketball practices before school at like 6 a.m. or whatever the case is, I always sometimes need to stay over some of my friends' house who stayed out that way, right? So you got to be able to talk to different people, ask them, is it good if I do this? Like, you got to just get in there and just like make your life the life that it needs to be. And I feel like those always added to me being able to be comfortable talking with all different types of people and just networking, no matter what background somebody has. I never felt like, I don't want to say I never felt nervous, but I always
Yeah.
had the ability to network and whatnot. So I think networking was the main thing that it helped me with being in all those different environments.
Do you think that confidence always, it sounds like to me like that confidence was always natural? Was it from instilled from your parents, or you think you just developed it on your own? Like, where does it maybe come from intrinsically for you, do you think?
Yeah, I think my dad was a huge element to my confidence, to be honest. Just with the element of being the best. I always felt like it's a little bit of I don't know if prejudice or racism is the right word, but you just like, man, Nigerians are the best at everything. We the best athletes, we the best in the classroom, we the best this, like, so you just carry that like, oh, I gotta be the best no matter what I do, like, period. Like, it ain't no, like, I'm never looking to be second in anything. Like, I want to be the best, so I think that translated into confidence. That's how that showed up. And I think I really couldn't put my finger on all the elements of what made me confident in different scenarios and different situations. I just know that I was. And I know, like, for example, being at a predominantly white school as a Black male was a completely different experience from my sister being at a predominantly white school as a Black female, right? We went to different schools, but we went to very similar schools. And she was older than me, and I always saw that, like, the challenges that she had to deal with, like the struggles she had to deal with, and being in those environments. And I think she's the reason why I always wanted to, for example, like, be a president of the Black Student Union, which I was doing that in high school, and I did that in college as well. Like, she's the reason that I wanted to do those things. It was never a situation where like I felt like I needed to be with my community in a structured environment to like get that experience that I wasn't getting from, being able to talk about things that were happening on campus and all the racist things and all the challenges that we all go through. Like, I didn't necessarily need that for myself. It was more so like I wanted to be that person for like a person like my sister. I wanted to be that person for people who couldn't speak as freely as me. I wanted to be that for the people who I knew couldn't ingratiate themselves amongst different environments the way I could. You know what I'm saying? So I always had that that mindset of like, the National Association of Black Accountants, they have a saying that's lift as you climb, right? And that always resonated with me because I always wanted to, as I'm achieving more and as I'm progressing in my life, it's my responsibility to lift those under me so that they can also follow that blueprint and find success themselves. So I feel like I'm going on a tangent from your original question, but I
No, it's
always
all
had that
good.
confidence. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're confident. I'm really getting a clear sense of your confidence, Amechi, and it's not like um, it's not a braggadocious way in any means. It's like it's a humble confidence almost, and I could see why you and Keys get along so well just from the outside looking in. I mean, Keys is obviously a very confident personality, and I say all that to say, like, I guess how exactly did your partnership with him come about? How did you guys get maybe introduced?
Mhm.
And then why was a partnership, a business partnership, so natural for the two of you?
Yeah, well, first, just veggie backing off of what you said about, me and Keys and confidence. I always make the analogy of somebody like a 19 Keys is a lion, you know what I'm saying? King of the jungle. They walk into the room, you know who they are, you know what I'm saying? They take up space. Like it's you're gonna feel that energy, right? When they're in there. Me, on the other hand, the type of personality that I am, I would compare myself to a jaguar, right? Jaguars don't really, they're never mentioned as the king of the jungle, right? But jaguars do their own thing. They're like their own autonomous kings. Nobody's messing with them. They do their own thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I've always felt. Like I'm the king of, I don't have to be so in your face out in front. I can be in the behind the scenes. I could be, behind the movement. I could be a little bit of that. I don't need the spotlight on me.
Yeah.
But if the spotlight does come and if I need to step into the spotlight, I have no problem with that because I'm completely confident and comfortable in my own skin. So I always like that kind of jaguar lion analogy. But I actually met 19 Keys through my cousin who had an organization, still has an organization called Trap Art. Now, Trap Art basically is an organization that throws parties all around the world. We started in the Bay Area, but we do parties all over around the world. And they're art parties. So we have artists come through, whether you're a painter or a designer, whether you have products that you're selling, whatever it may be. We gave and we still give artists and entrepreneurs the opportunities to be at these party environments and sell their merch, sell their gear, sell their paintings, sell whatever they have, right? And so while I was working in public accounting, I was helping my cousin out with the media side of things, right? So I basically had this concept to build out Trap Art TV. We would interview artists. We would basically be a hub of content for artists where they can come and talk about their process as an artist, show what they've done, all those sort of things. And so we eventually had a magazine, podcast, different forms of media, but ultimately the goal was to give artists a spotlight and highlight them. 19 Keys was the first artist that I interviewed in Trap Art. And I always I told my cousin, I was like, I guarantee you one of these artists, at least one of these artists is going to change the world in like on a grand scale. One of these artists is going to blow up to proportions that we can't even think of right now. Like one of them. And I've done hundreds of interviews with artists and 19 Keys was the first artist that I interviewed. And so, we've done multiple interviews. We've done multiple collaborations at that time. We built up a brotherhood, so to speak. Him being from Oakland, us resonating on a lot of different things. And I remember we had this studio in Hayward, California. Shout out to Johnny, whose studio it was, who helped us out with everything over there. And 19 Keys, he kind of told me and Jonathan, who was another videographer at the time that I was working with, one of my best friends. He sat us down and he basically told us, he was like, look, I'm going to build this 19 Keys brand and it's going to change the whole entire world. It's going to be something that we're going to have content from, media from. We're going to go and get speaking engagements. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to do all these things. And I remember I was kind of like, looking at him like I wasn't dismissive of it, but I didn't fully, lock into the vision.
I got you.
You never know. You gotta, it's like, I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I see it, yeah, for sure. But just kind of like, well, what is he talking about, right? And so, fast forward to like 2 years later, he moves down to LA. His brand is starting to really move. And, we had a conversation. We just said, look, I see what you're doing. I see what you want to do. I think I can help take that to where it needs to go, right? I see the vision. I see the opportunity and I see what you need. You need a manager and you need really like your media to go to another level, right? And so we basically came into a partnership, started High Lvl Media, built up High Lvl Conversations, and the rest is history. That's really how everything started. And once High Lvl Conversations started, everything started to take off. And it's one of the it's the opportunity of a lifetime, and it's difficult for a lot of people to find when you're working with your friends, when you're working with people that you grew up with. It's hard to trust people on the outside. Once you reach a certain level of success, people always want something from you, right? Yeah. And it's hard to have that trust built up and things like that. And with me, I see 19 Keys for who he is. At the end of the day, like he's been able to gain a massive platform. He's been able to work with so many people across the world and do so much impact for our community, but he's always been the same person. I don't mean that in the terms of he hasn't grown. Of course he's grown and all those sort of things, but I've always seen who he was, and it's just now that people are gravitating towards him. It's not like he's changed. You know what I'm saying? And it's good to have people around you that have seen your progress, your journey. Shout out to Steve Jones. We have a very small team, and it's a lot of people that have known him that are either family or very, very close friends, to the point where we are basically family. So you kind of have to find your lane in that, find your, where you can shine in that. But it takes still being able to add value. You have to add value, because this isn't a charity at the end of the day. This isn't like, we ultimately want to be the best of what we do. So that's actually why right now I'm building out my own community called the Confidant Community, where the goal of it is to help people basically get to that level where they may be behind the scenes, but it's putting the spotlight on them, right? So teaching them how to organize, how to put on events, how to put on shows, how to do content, how to go through a calendar, how to manage everything that you do when you're behind the scenes of a major movement in a managerial sort of position. So that's what I'm looking to do now, and share that information with other people who want to learn how they can be, a confidant themselves.
I love that. And that's exactly what you're doing now with Keys, right? It's like you're what, each one teach one, so to speak.
100%.
But I loved your story earlier, Amechi, about kind of how you're like the jaguar. You can kind of be behind the scenes, and Keys is a lion, right? But I love the fact that you guys are like working together, but like, kind of who you are, right? You don't need to be the guy out in front, and you're okay with that. And I think a lot of people don't understand the fact that maybe they are best equipped in maybe a role that's not, being so out there in the spotlight. Maybe
100%.
you're at your best in being kind of the best ever, like behind the scenes. And so I guess why is that? Why do you think it's so important to know yourself? And because like I've kind of outlined it, it seems like you and Keys, and you mentioned Steve Jones too. Like you guys have like this synergy, and no one steps on each other's toes, so to speak. It seems like there's no ego from the outside looking in. What can you say about like the importance of, I guess, knowing who you are to be that 100% version of yourself?
That's very important, especially with Black men. Ego comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Ego destroys a lot of things, right? We don't always have the ability to just build with our community and do what's best, not only for ourselves, but for our community, right? And that's another thing about the work that I'm doing. I'll answer your question, but ultimately, like, if you feel like what you're doing is you're tangibly affecting your community and making a positive impact, that ultimately, if you feel like you're serving God and doing what God is telling you to do, that ultimately is going to direct all of your decisions, right? It's not even about yourself. It's not about even this world. It's about impacting things beyond you. So I think that's ultimately a goal. But to answer your question more directly, yeah, we have a lot of ego issues in our community, especially with Black men. And, I always looked at it as, do you want 100% of something very small, or do you want 40% of something that's huge, right? Just change your opinion, change your mindset when it comes to building. And you have to understand, like, keeping the main thing. Like, what's the main thing? A lot of things are timing, right? So, some people may have their visions, their goals. Everybody has that, right? So taking a back seat to work with somebody in a role that's more behind the scenes, maybe that doesn't align with your ultimate vision, but it's all about timing. Maybe if you put your energy into doing that right now, then when the timing is right, you'll be in a better position to be in the spotlight at how you would see for yourself and do your own thing and kind of test things out. But always think about timing in your life, because life is timing and opportunities, right? I look at LeBron James, right? Look at the people around him. Maverick Carter, right? Rich Paul, exactly, right? All these people that we know from LeBron James, but they kept the main thing. And when it was their time, they were able to transition and show that, again, they're Jaguars, right? They're able to be the kings of what they do, leaders at the top level of what they do, right? So it becomes a thing where everybody, I think that's a great example. There's a lot of people that have people behind the scenes that aren't in the spotlight. Not everybody is a Rich Paul or a Maverick Carter, where it's like a known kind of entity, but nobody does anything alone. You know what I'm saying? There's always somebody behind the scenes. There's always people that are putting things in place. And, 9 times out of 10, if you see something that's very successful, whether that be a business or whether that be a individual, right? We're we're transitioning into an economy in a world where it's very individual centered, where the thought leaders, the influencers have such a big influence on the way things work, right? Advertisers are looking for thought leaders themselves instead of just going to specific channels at this time and at this day and time. So I think that, there's always a time and place for things, and you have to keep the main thing. And I think LeBron James and the way he's done things is a great example for people to see, especially in our community, of how it can work if you keep the main thing. And when it's your time, you're able to build your own brand and kind of make your own mark.
How do you think, what do you think is the best way for someone who maybe struggles with that, right? In terms of like figuring out exactly what their role is, or kind of what their brand is, so to speak. What advice would you give to people who, to not only find out what it is, like what personality type and kind of what their thing is, but also to be successful in that pursuit as well?
Yeah, I mean, you got to know yourself. I think you even said it yourself. You got to do self-assessments. You want to make a dossier on yourself. Understand what is your personality type, right? How do you work with people, right? Because your personality type is not just about yourself. It's about understanding the personality types of the people around you, the relationships you have, the business relationships you have, so that you know how to best work with the people that you're around. Right. You have to understand how you operate and do a very deep dive self-assessment to understand the best pathway forward to reaching ultimately the success that you want to achieve. So I think that's like a very key element of it, like understanding, who you are as a person, what your vision is, what exactly do you want to accomplish, putting that on paper, having a vision board for it, and seeing how you can best build up to making that come into actuality. So I definitely think that's a key element of it. What else would I say to answer that question? So basically, if somebody is looking to identify, because not everybody, it's very interesting. I think it was Future who said in a song, the luxury of passion, man. Passion is a luxury, man. Passion is like, not everybody has it, right? Like, and if you have that passion, I feel like there's nothing that's going to take you away from doing it, right? There's no talk. You really don't even need motivation, because if you're truly passionate about something, it's going to happen. There's nothing that's going to stop you from doing it, right? So if you reach that point of like true passion, do not be in a situation of like analysis paralysis. You probably already had a great idea of like how to put it out and make it happen. So just execute, focus on executing. And the main thing I would say when it comes to execution is, you maybe read a book that says like the 10 ways to do this, or you read another thing that's like the 7 ways to do this, or you watch a YouTube video and it says 5 key principles for you to do. It doesn't matter what you choose.
Yeah.
It just matters that you choose something, and if it works, double down on it. If it doesn't work, then revisit what you can do to make some adjustments, maybe go a different route, get some other information. You make some adjustments. You have to self-audit yourself, but it's all about just going for something, executing. And if you don't know what the next step is, then get some knowledge, get some education, learn, be in a community, right? Be in a network of people that can help support you towards your goal. If you're trying to go to the gym and you're trying to get some big gains, it may be hard for you to go every single day yourself. But if you have a trainer, if you have even just a friend that can go with you, man, like that's the support that you need to keep you honest and make sure that you're giving, again, 110% effort when you're out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are all great points. And yeah, there are no excuses, I feel like, in today's world. I mean, we have all the and I know Keys talks a lot about this too, right? Like
100%.
we have the internet is free, right? Like you have YouTube, you can find a buddy, you can do all these things. We have AI, which is making things a lot easier and more efficient. Like there's really no excuse.
I will say though, I don't mean to cut you off, but I will say with that though, yes, there are no excuses, but at the same time, the reality of it is, there's never been a generation that's also had to deal with social media, that's had to deal with AI, it's had to deal with the things that we have. Yes, they're great resources if you're using them in the appropriate way, but they are huge distractions.
Yeah.
Everything around us is distractions. We've never been more distracted than we are right now. And yes, if you have a goal and whatnot, if you have a vision, if you have a dream, like, yes, you should, there's no excuses. You should get it done, but you got to acknowledge that we're in a society right now where distractions are rampant. And so you got to be able to deal with that and stay solid, keep a foundation. I think for me, for somebody like myself, like, we in a godless society. You got to keep God first. That's me. At the end of the day, I know everybody else may have their own ways of kind of going about things in life, but for me, you got to keep God first. And you got to stay focused on your mission, because there's a lot of things that can get you distracted these days.
Good point. Good point. Wanted to shift gears a little bit, Amechi, and talk a little bit more about your work with Keys, specifically.
Yeah.
What if you had to explain to someone what you do on a day-to-day basis? How exactly would you go about explaining that? Because Keys, you look at his vlogs, you look at the lives he does, you look at this tour, the Save Yourself tour and whatnot. Like he does so many different things. So for someone working for him behind the scenes, what is that looking like on a day-to-day, a week-to-week basis?
I always tell people, first of all, I hate titles. I'm not a big title person. I wear a lot of different hats, wear a lot of different crowns, and titles, people are always, it's a very ego-driven thing, I think. At the end of the day, it's about what are you doing to add value. But I always tell people I help impact the culture in a positive way through media and through organization and business, right? That's what I do. And if somebody ever asked you, like, what do you do, and you're having a hard time explaining it, I always tell people, think with the work backwards, think with the end goal in mind. What do you do? How do people benefit from what you do, right? What do people need from you who are benefiting from that? And what's the benefit that they get, right? So think with that in mind, then go backwards. And that's a good way to find out the best way to explain and describe what you do. So I would say, as an overview, that's what I do. So what does that actually mean? I help oversee the content, right? So I help keep the media pushing, right? We have a lot of different content funnels, a lot of different partnerships that we're working on. And it's not just the content itself, it's making sure that you can bring in advertisement dollars, sponsorships, finding deals, finding the right relationships in general. We have a pretty small team, but it's a strong team. And we partner with a lot of different businesses and brands. So just finding the right partnerships and the right alignment, because ultimately, like, we're in this business world, we want to, earn income, we want to make money. We definitely want to do those things so that we can, pay for our team, so that we can eat, so that we can live the lives that we need to live. But ultimately, it's not just about money for us and what we do. So partnerships are key, because they have to be people and brands that align with our goals, our mission, vision, and values. And if they don't align with those things, we can't work with them, And so you would think that with somebody like 19 Keys, right, there'd be plenty of brands and opportunities that would want to work and have a piece of that community that he's been able to build and the movement that he's been able to start. You would think that with all of the partnerships and brand deals for, whether it be rappers that are talking about killing each other in their music, or whether it be just the negativity that we see and the distractions we see every day, it's almost incentivized for people to act that way, because we're seeing how they benefit from it in our society. You would think that there'd be a lot of opportunities for that, but there's a lot of, and there are a lot of opportunities. I don't want to say there's not opportunities, but it's definitely a challenging process to find brands that are aligned with what we want to do. And, we just have to work with the right people. And so back to your question, that's a big part of my job, is like finding those partnerships, working with those people, help keeping the media going. And then just like the day to day, like we have, meetings every day. I'm glad we were able to keep this call. I came a little bit late because I've been in meetings literally all day, like back to back meetings. You mentioned the Save Yourself tour, February 7th. I'm not sure where this episode is going to be aired, but definitely get your tickets at 19keys.com/tour. It's going to be in New York. We're going to be kicking off a tour. But this is the event that you want to go to. I don't care if you live in St. Louis, if you live in Houston, wherever you're at, come to this New York event. It should be an amazing experience, not just for the event itself, but for the whole High Level weekend that we have planned. But people don't know what it goes on to put on an event like a tour, right? Again, I'm the person who's responsible for those things, right? Behind the scenes, like that's me. So, when you're talking about doing an advance with the venue, right? Meeting with the venue multiple times to go through all the production needs and making sure that the production's on point, making sure that you have the right teams in place for staffing and for the ushers that you need, making sure that we have clearance on who can vend at the event, what are the vending terms, how we're going to go about dealing with the rooms and what needs to be in the rooms for the backstage situation, the guests that are going to be there, coordinating that. Like, there's a lot of different elements when it comes to putting on a show. And really, ultimately, like, I'll simplify it this way. I want Keys to focus on the main thing. He's got to go out there, tap in with the people, affect the people in a positive way, lead the culture forward. And so ultimately my job when I look at it with putting on something like a tour is to make sure that everything else runs smoothly so that he can do his thing. Like, that's ultimately what it's about. Like, putting together the team, putting together, like, the travel accommodations, when we toured last year, we were doing a whole tour bus from different cities, like back to back to back. And, it's a lot of things that are involved with that, right? You got to bring people in who are on our team. You got to have the bus. There's a lot of different details that are involved with something like that. So again, I think for me, it's not just being a creative. I have elements of myself that's a creative, but I also have, the organization elements. I have the accounting background, the business background, all the different things that I kind of went through in my life has built me for a position, I think, like I'm in right now, because I'm using all the tools that I have at my disposal every single day when I'm working behind the scenes. So again, it's a lot of things, but ultimately, like, and I say the main thing for a producer is getting things from A to B. That's what I do. I get things from A to B. I don't care what has to happen. There's always going to be something that's going to go wrong. There's always going to be a challenge. There's always going to be an issue, especially on the actual days of events. That's always going to happen. But I guarantee you I'm going to get from A to B, and I'm going to do it with positive energy and good vibes.
You mentioned, Amechi, how your accounting background is kind of helped you with everything you're doing. I think you mentioned that you're a member of the National Association of Black Accountants as well. And from my research on you, it seemed like you had a really cushy job in Silicon Valley. I know you said you were at Ernst Young earlier in the conversation for everyone should know that's one of the top accounting firms in the world.
I'll say the top.
Yeah. But I mentioned that because, I mean, you basically left that comfort to do what you're doing now, right? In terms of everything with Keys and the different business ventures and digital media storytelling and whatnot. Why was it so important for you to make that pivot?
It's interesting, like, accounting. Again, I majored in accounting and also majored in communications at Santa Clara University. And it was really always a plan B for me. I wanted to delve into the business world, but my whole thing in college was like, if I major in management, what does that even mean on a resume? No disrespect to the people that have management majors and things like that, but like, I always wanted to be in a position of leadership. I always wanted to be doing something like a manager, right? So I figured if I learned the language of business, which is accounting for the most part, then that would set me up for opportunities to pursue on my own, for my own business, working with other businesses. To me, that was a direct line. And I knew that the school I went to had a great accounting program. So I knew I can easily get a job at one of these top firms, which is, a great starting point for that. So, I was one of those people that I had an internship when my junior year in college. Senior year, I basically already had the job. So my whole senior year, like,
coasting.
I don't want to say coasting, but I would just say appreciative.
Gotcha.
I was really appreciative of the experience of, like, being in college and the networking and the people I was around. I feel like I appreciated more than a lot of my peers who were they were thinking and
scrambling.
Exactly. Yeah. They had all these concerns, but for me, I kind of already had the vision and it was being executed. So I could focus on, like, really taking that time to appreciate the situation. But in any case, it was always a plan B for me. And so I feel like being at somewhere like EY, where the turnover is crazy, and all these public accounting firms, the turnover is crazy. It's so many people. I was in the San Jose office, clients like Apple, Google, Facebook, all the big companies, right? That's why I say it was like the biggest, public accounting firm in the world, not only being EY, but being in the San Jose office. I mean, other than New York, it was the biggest one in terms of the clients and whatnot, right? So very challenging, very demanding, but I always asked to do more things than a lot of my peers. I was traveling, I was going to, do different audits and things of that nature in San Diego and Chicago. And I was traveling all over. And I always asked my managers and my supervisors for the ability to see different elements of the company, because I just was so interested in learning how to be in a professional service firm at the highest level. What are the principles that they take out. I always tell people, man, when you're working at any business, like you got to take your piece of the pie. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to be able to gain something from that for yourself that you can actually put into use for yourself, right? You don't want to just be working there and letting all these great opportunities pass you by. Like, no, like, and I tapped in with everybody from the IT team to the team that was helping put on some of our award shows and events to the team that was outreaching with the Black student unions and different campuses around the world, right? I was involved in all those things. So to me, I learned a lot about the business. And when I finally decided it was time to, make that next step in my career to as Keys would say, fire my job, right? I basically knew that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always knew I wanted to start my own production company. And so that was when it was time, it was time. And like I said earlier, like if you really want to do something, if you really are passionate about something, there's nothing that's going to hold you back. It doesn't matter how much money you're making, you can't live with yourself if you're doing that, right? And so for me, it was never about money. What's making 100,000 plus versus making like 60,000 plus? Not that big of a difference. Like if we talking about like millions and stuff like that, okay, that's some of the conversation to be had. But you're talking about like 100,000 versus like 60,000. But if I can make that 60,000 into something that I'm working for myself, actually putting into practices for my own business, I will reap the benefits of that directly. So it's invaluable, So I always figured that I would do my own thing. And like I said earlier, when the opportunity came to work with Keys, it's just you got to know the opportunity and you got to know the timing. That wasn't the path for me of like, oh, I want to work with one of my good friends and help build up his business and do everything on the back end. That's not something that I had in the cards and in the plans, but nothing is random. I always say nothing is random. And you find opportunities, you listen to the signs, you listen to God. And I feel like everything worked out the way it was supposed to. And I couldn't be happier.
Speaking of timing, how do you know when is the right thing to do something? I know faith is a big thing for you, as you've alluded to, and you pointed to kind of looking out for the signs, right? But how does someone actually know it's time to do something, right? Because you can perceive really anything you want almost. So I guess how do you know when it's actually time or not time to do something?
That's a good question. I think it's different for everybody, but I know for somebody like myself, you seek a challenge, right? You go into these different seasons of life, and sometimes it's time for things to die. Sometimes it's time for things to begin. I can't really give you a more logical answer. It's kind of poetic in that sense of just like being able to stay in tune with the symbols around you. Again, I'm very spiritual. So for me, like, I look at talking with God. It's not like when I was younger, when you were a kid, you kind of think it's like, oh, hey, God, I need this to happen. Can you make this happen? Oh, okay. Like you're not getting a
Exactly.
one-on-one conversation. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But if you just really tap in and pay attention to the symbols around you, pay attention to when things happen and why things happen, you'll be able to know. You'll be able to find the signs. Nothing is random. Nothing is random, right? Everything has a purpose. Everything has a pattern to it. Everything has a place for it. So you just got to pay attention to those things. And again, for me, you got to really challenge yourself to know if you are who you say you are. If you work at a business like EY, like I was, this major business, top accounting firm, you did well to get that job. You did well to put yourself in that position to be there. But what have you actually done for yourself? You're in a big machine. Can you do something like this for your own self? Can you make a big movement that people know globally, that people would want to sign up and go to events and, be waiting in lines to see something that you're a part of do? Like, can you prove that for yourself? And it came to a point for me where I was like, yeah, I gotta do something from the ground up. So working with an organization like Trap Art that I talked about earlier, building up my own, ad color media, and now, working with High Lvl Media, 19 Keys, and seeing what we were able to accomplish, I think it was a personal challenge to see, can you do that for yourself and not for this big machine and this big business? And we've been able to prove that.
Amechi, you mentioned earlier, I guess it was something along the lines of like, if you're struggling to tell someone kind of what your job is or whatever, like explain what the vision is. You said something along the lines of that. So I bring that up to say, so what is the vision that you and Keys are working towards with High Level Media, High Level Conversations, High Level Club, all that? What is that thing that you guys are building, working towards?
It's a high level world, man. It's a high level world. It's a high level world. And I think it's always good to have a vision board of what you're trying to get to, and not only in like in a logical sense of like these are the type of things, but also just in a poetic sense where it's like, what is the world that you see developing if everything that you're doing comes to fruition? And I see it in the community that we've been able to build. I see it when we go to the events, when I meet people in person and they speak, they have tears in their eyes sometimes speaking with Keys and seeing how he resonates. It's interesting being at events like an Invest Fest, for example, or uh, these major festivals and conferences where you see so many different celebrities, business people, artists, etc. And I always felt like the energy that Keys gets is a different type of energy from other people. And I think it's because there's an ultimate vision of leading our people in the right direction, right? Like I mentioned earlier, lifting as you climb, not just for an individual that I'm working with, but for our whole entire community, right? Being able to provide the tools as we're going through these processes of our experiences of everything that we're learning and everything that we're developing and everything that we're growing, giving that information and not gatekeeping it so that people can do the same for themselves in their own communities so that we can actually change things to have a better world, right? I talked earlier about partnering with the right people. We've built a vast network of incredible individuals that we've partnered with, incredible businesses and brands. And it's really a lot of times it's putting those things in the spotlight that don't always get the spotlight that they deserve, right? I feel like with some of the episodes that we've done with High Level Conversations, we're coming up on February in the next few weeks. And when you think about Black History Month, I think, for example, the episode we did with Kaba Kamane, that is an episode that is required watching for Black history, right? Like there's so many of our elders that we have, I don't want to say forgotten, but there's a gap of knowledge that our elders have that we need to give to our people. And I feel like it's our responsibility to get some of those stories out and highlight some of those people. There's some people that are doing some great work, community work. We went on tour in Chicago and we had Inglewood Barbie. We honored her and gave her we gave her I think $5,000 for all the work that she was doing and just more of a spotlight on her, because those are the type of people that need to be highlighted in our communities, right? So I just feel like there's a responsibility to build out this high level world of businesses, brands, individuals who are, putting the culture first, putting the community first, and in a lot of instances, putting God first, right? I think ultimately that's what it's about. And having, we're in a very godless society. We're in a society where there's a lot of negativity, a lot of challenges. And, I just feel like we're doing our part to elevate the culture and lift the culture up.
I love it, Amechi. I'm kind of winding down here. Where can people go online or on social media to connect with you, Keys, High Level? And if you wanted to plug the Save Yourself tour as well, that'd be great. This episode's going to come out before that
Okay.
February show. So
wonderful. Well, yeah, I would pick it up from there. First of all, I appreciate the time. Appreciate you reaching out to me. I think it's if this was last year, I may not have accepted this opportunity, but I'm in this position right now where I'm finally putting more of a spotlight on myself and not just being behind the scenes, because I think it's important, again, not to gatekeep the information. It's important for people to see these perspectives. I know a lot of times people see a 19 Keys, people see a Jaylen Brown, people see a Kendrick Lamar, and like they want to be the main person, but you're forgetting about the Dave Freeze of the world, right? The Maverick Carters of the world, the people who are behind the scenes where there's a lot of opportunity to do amazing things. And I really want to bring that to the forefront. So again, I appreciate a platform like yours giving a light to that. I would say 19keys.com and 19keys.com/tour. That's where you can get the information on the Save Yourself tour, February 7th in New York. We definitely want to see you there. We have a lot planned, not just for that date, but for the whole weekend. So make a trip out to New York. It's going to be an amazing time. And I would say join the community. You can find the community at 19keys.com, or you can just go to High Level, that's HIGHLVL.19keys.com. And that's where you can tap in with the community. What I'm going to be doing in there is giving a lot of people information on really this whole confident community that I'm building up, a lot of the resources when it comes to learning about a second brain, learning about organization, learning about some of these AI tools, right? Learning about so much when it comes to the behind the scenes things of putting on an event and really managing somebody. I really want to give that information out to the people. So the best way you can find me right now is through the High Lvl community. And if you're on social media, it's at B_Amechi. That's at B_AMECHI. Once again, I really appreciate you for having me on the platform. And like I always say to everybody, it's positive energy and good vibes.
Love it. Everyone listening, watching, all that information will be in the show notes. And my last question for you, Amechi, and I'll let you get out of here. I know you're a busy guy this time of year, but what is one thing you believe that people can do more of to get a step closer to unlocking the highest version of themselves?
That's a good question. That's a good question. That's a great question. If I could summarize it into one step for people to get to their highest selves, I would say it's okay to dream big. And the reason why I say that is I feel like a lot of times we have goals that are manageable, smart goals, goals that are achievable, goals that, there's something that we can see on the short term. And I think one of the biggest concepts in life is short term versus long term. And you always have to have the long term, right? You always got to have a long term vision. What do I want to do for my future family? What do I want to do for putting myself in the best position? What do I want to accomplish with my business, with my brand? Like, what's the long term, the legacy results of that? When I'm gone, how will people receive that, right? That's long term thinking. And I think that everything that you do on a short term basis should be connected to a long term. And if you find out that something that you're doing, yeah, I'm making money and that's helping me do this because I have bills to pay, but that has nothing to do with where I want to go, then that's a point where you have to make a shift. And it may not be, oh, I'm gonna quit my job right now. Like, I'm not advocating for that, but I am advocating for a self-assessment, a self-audit, looking at your life, looking at your situation and saying, am I doing what I need to do now to be where I want to be in the future? Is my short terms connected to my long terms? And if it's not, then you have to self-evaluate, make some changes, and take a step forward from there. But again, one step at a time. It's not going to flip over off of one decision, but all those small decisions that you make, the habits that you build, you'll lead to the success that you want.
Amechi, thank you so much for your time, and for all you listening via YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for rocking with me, all the encouragement, support. It's at Bridge to Self across platforms. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and follow and rate the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Give me that feedback so I know how to make the show a better product for you all, because I want to make sure this is the best podcast possible. But you guys know the deal. Every other Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Time. So until next time, I'll see you guys soon. All right. Peace out.